You are listening to the serialized audiobook podcast for Blood of the Stars, an epic fantasy novel written by Karyne Norton, read by Paeter Frandsen and Karyne Norton. If you can't wait to listen to the whole audiobook, or if you want a signed physical copy, go to karynnorton.com/shop to get the lowest cost by buying direct. You can also find the audiobook on Audible, Barnes & Noble, and other standard retailers. Please enjoy the next installment of Blood of the Stars by Karyne Norton. Chapter 86. Eliana lifted her eyes to the darkening sky. The stars were just beginning to show, their faint patterns visible against the purple of twilight. Only tonight, they didn't seem to dance. The few she could see flickered, bundling together. Were they disappointed in her? Did they regret giving her a starlock? "You've done well." Mavis's affirmation filled Eliana's mind, even as her aunt's ice nearly killed Silmar. Where did ice fall on the wheel of magic anyway? Or did Mavis's brands allow her to tap into new magic? Her mind distantly registered thunderous fire from Durakan. She knew she should be horrified by the things happening, but they no longer concerned her. The shouts of her comrades seemed faded, both in her hearing and in her mind. The dark spirits drawing closer felt harmless. Those things simply didn't matter anymore. Even the burn that grew and intensified in her left palm didn't matter. "Daisy, can you hear me?" Eliana tensed, her hearing perking up like that of a hound on a trail. "She'll sense me soon. Fight her control. Listen to me, and fight her before she knows your loyalty is divided." Warmth flooded her chest and spread to her limbs, awareness resuming with an awful jolt. The sounds around her magnified, the horror of the grunts and screams of friend and foe echoing in the night air. Her mother stood before her, Eliana's dagger in her hand. Eliana blinked down at it, trying to think why her mother would try to harm her, then realized Mavis held Eliana out like a shield. Her mother was desperate to get to Mavis. Was she desperate enough to go through her daughter? Her mother licked her lips, and Eliana's gaze shot between the dagger starlock around her neck and the dagger in her hand. Something was wrong. Eliana could feel it even through the haze of not one, but two brands. She prayed to the stars that Mavis's distraction would keep her from sensing all the wrongness too. "Don't ever harm your mother," Mavis whispered in her ear. "I need her." The command made her sick with a need to obey, and yet she also felt sick over her desire to go against anything Mavis might say. Her gaze swung to Karyne, who crouched halfway across the balcony. Had he really branded her? After all his hatred for blood magic, after her history with it? He was supposed to kill her. but this was more likely to kill him. He nodded at her. Resist. Take away the source of her power. A whimper escaped Eliana's lips. She was the source of Mavis's power. She couldn't take that away because Mavis had commanded her not to. The commands competed in her mind, not perfect contradictions, but still impossible to reconcile. Eliana. Her mother's brow furrowed, drawing Eliana's attention. Please, daughter, don't stop me from saving us all. Her words triggered a response, her body prioritizing Mavis's command before her mind could process her options. She tackled her mother, and the dagger flew from her mother's hand, clattering against stone. No, her mother said, pushing Eliana aside as she clawed her way toward the blade. But Eliana was faster, stronger. Her hands raked across her mother's neck, drawing blood, and the brand on her palm stung. She hadn't meant to disobey. She hadn't realized it was possible to. Still, she reached for her dagger before her mother could, then clambered back and stood to ensure she couldn't accidentally harm her mother more, just like Mavis had commanded. Good girl. The words filled Eliana's ears and mind as Mavis stroked the back of her hair. Now, Daisy, resist her while she's comfortable. Take away her power. Eliana turned to Mavis and lifted her dagger. For a single breath, she hesitated, watching as Mavis's eyes narrowed before scanning the others, seeking out the source of Eliana's resistance. The brand was still too strong for Eliana to hurt Mavis, but Garen's command finally took hold, understanding dawning. In one quick motion, she sliced the leather cord of Mavis's starlock and tugged it from her aunt's neck. Mavis snarled and reached for her starlock, but Eliana stepped back and cut the cord of her own before tossing them both toward Garen. Mavis's hands went to her chest and neck, patting them down as if she felt the same nakedness as Eliana, the same weakness. Cold fright swept through Eliana, followed by relief. Mavis could no longer use her power. Her aunt stumbled away, getting lost in the chaos. It felt like a battle won, but Cyrus still fought on the other side of the balcony, wearing down one of the soldiers. Lukai practically held Garen up near its center. Her mother lay at her feet, the recent grapple over the dagger filling Eliana with shame. Silmar's and Veldon's efforts to restrain Durakin came to a standstill as the dragon shook his head, as though waking from the same dazed state as Eliana. A cold hand circled her wrist and took the dagger from her grip. Eliana blinked up into the determined eyes of her mother. "Which one is Mavis's?" her mother asked, turning Eliana's palms up. Eliana held her hands up, examining the small red bond mark on her left palm next to a slightly larger black bump that looked raw and misshapen, like a child had tried drawing a triangle. She didn't remember it from before, so that one must be Garen's. Her right hand held 2 marks, the first being a much larger portion of raised skin covering a quarter of its surface. That one had to be Durakin's. But the second was small, like Brogdon's, the skin smooth and the shape a perfect circle, like that brand had been done by the brander 1,000 times. Because it had. This one. Eliana flinched and cried out as her mother wasted no time digging the brand out of her hand, half of her pain from the clear disregard for Mavis's desires. But Mavis's power had diminished with the absence of her starlock, and Karyne's wish for her to cut out the brand was stronger. Blood sprayed both Eliana and her mother, and in Eliana's pain, she fought to restrain the pull of blood magic to heal herself. Lukai was there in an instant, wrapping his arms around her and placing his hand over hers, healing the skin her mother tore loose. "Get down," Karyne called. The three dropped to their knees as a gust of wind threatened to pull them to the balcony's edge. They linked their arms while still managing to completely remove the brand. "The sun and stars are not the only source of power in this world," Mavis said, her voice coming out like a growl. Eliana turned, squinting against the dust rising in the air with Mavis's storm. Blood streamed from her aunt's hand, which she raised toward the skies. She was beckoning the dark spirits, inviting them in. Durakin shifted along the edge of the balcony, adjusting his perch to be closer to Eliana. His wings beat more frantically, and his eyes rolled in panic. Their connection was weak with her starlock gone, but it was still there. "Free me, too. Free me." The rumble of words was so deep, Eliana almost didn't understand them. But her heart seemed to sense their meaning. She took the dagger from her mother and stepped closer to Durakin. "No, Daisy," Karyne called. She hesitated, sensing the words he shouted from within. It was a command as much as a warning, and she couldn't resist. "I'm sorry, is it safe?" This time, his words were spoken only in her mind. She turned to study him from across the balcony. "Safer than the alternative." She gestured toward Mavis, who managed to ward off Silmar's and Veldon's attacks while waiting for her spirits to empower her. Karyne nodded. She turned back to Durakin, who struggled to lift his right paw toward her without completely losing his grip on the wall, and his wings beat so powerfully, Eliana lost her balance. Lukai came up behind her to steady her as she leaned out to cut Durakin's paw. "What if you take the whole paw?" he asked. "Like me, Klaus." Durakin's growl was more like a hiss, the heat of his breath sending steam at them both. Eliana ignored the question. "Heal him too," she pleaded, and to her relief, Lukai placed a trembling hand on the dragon's paw, healing it as she cut. They hadn't gotten halfway through before the air around them turned to ice, and the stars above were blotted out. Even cold-blooded Durakin shivered in the wind, losing his grip and plummeting half a story before his wings caught him back up. Mavis's laugh rose above her wind until it shifted to a gurgle and choke. Eliana turned around and immediately wished she hadn't. The dark spirit clawing its way into Mavis's mouth was twice the size of any Eliana had seen. It filled every space of Mavis, pulling color from her while healing her wounds and returning her strength. When her throat was clear once more, she let out a sigh of bliss. She opened her eyes, and her black irises latched onto Eliana. The transition hadn't ever been this way with Arvid, but maybe this spirit was too big to fit in such a small woman. Maybe it leaked out through every pore and socket. "You've stolen my brand and my starlock." Mavis took a step toward Eliana, the motion so smooth, Eliana doubted her feet touched the stone. Her teeth and tongue were blackened by the spirit's touch. "And now you try to steal my dragon?" A growl started in Durican's throat. "Resist her." Eliana tried to push the same thoughts on Durican that Karyne had pushed on her, but she didn't have her starlock. She didn't know if it would work. "I had plans for you," Mavis said, "but plans can change. Durican, take her to your cave and hold her there." Durican rose above Eliana. His eyes glazed over with the command, infused with the power of blood magic and a dark spirit. "Better my paw than my life." The pause and the rumbled words were all Eliana needed to drop her dagger and pull Lukai's sword from his sheath. It was heavier than she'd expected after only training with daggers and bows, but she could still lift and swing. The blade sliced through Durican's right foreleg, severing it just above the joint. The appendage holding Mavis's brand landed at Eliana's feet with a sickening thud. Instead of reaching for Eliana, Durican let out a cry, then dropped, barely giving her and Lukai enough time to roll out of his way. The entire northern keep shuddered under his weight. Mavis briefly stumbled, but quickly caught herself as the others still scrambled for purchase. "The whole tower's going down!" Veldin shouted, pulling Iris to her feet while swinging her arm across his shoulder. "We have to get out of here!" Lukai rushed to help Emerus, but Eliana went straight for Durican's snout, where mournful cries escaped. She placed a hand on his scales. His eyes opened, and he stilled. "I'm sorry." She hoped Durican could still sense her words through his pain. The tower shifted beneath them, making Eliana slide closer to Durican's wing. Warmth touched her back and hands lifted a leather cord over her head. She felt her starlock's heat before she even saw it. "Yes," she breathed out, bending forward to heal Durican's stump. She couldn't give him back his paw, but at least she could do this. As his wound closed over and her power waned, her mind flooded with his memories. Flying back to his home after she'd freed him, content to live out his days in peace rather than vengeance. Waking with the pain of another brand forming on his paw. Misjudging Mavis's power. "She had no right. I'm so sorry." A simmering growl came from Durican's mouth, more like a hum. "She probably has stores of your blood to do it all over again." The growl intensified. "Can you still command him?" Karyne leaned in to ask, "Can he take us all to safety?" Eliana frowned, searching for Mavis. Silmar's staff was in one piece again, and he drove Mavis back with its molten frame. But she returned a wind that knocked him aside. "I doubt it. Besides, if we run now, we just have to do this all over again," Eliana said. If they'd defeated Arvid and his dark spirit, they could defeat Mavis and hers too. Eliana's mind sped through the fight with Arvid, the way he'd still needed blood magic. Mavis would eventually need more. She couldn't drain all of her own blood. "We can weaken her. Besides, we asked for this war. He didn't." She leaned against Durican's forearm. "You're free. I have the right to command you, but I release you of it. Go where you want to go. Live how you want to live. Just never serve Mavis again." Durican stirred. Eliana stepped away, trading the warmth of the dragon's breath for the warmth of Karyne's hand. Eliana didn't know if her command could be enough to prevent Mavis's control if she branded him again. But maybe keeping him branded would allow Eliana to protect him in some way. She reached for her dagger, tucking it back into its sheath. The tower shifted again, making her stumble, and Karyne caught her, pulling her in against his chest. Durakan struggled to his 3 paws, testing out his balance, which only made the tower shift again. He let his wings spread, then flapped them harder, sending several others on their backsides once more.
"Thank you."
Durakan took off, first gliding down from the tower, then flapping his wings and rising higher into the night sky. The tower went still, its foundation no longer sturdy, but the threat of collapse momentarily halted. Karyne released Eliana, and they turned as one to face Mavis. Sharp pain stabbed into Eliana's side. She hunched forward as Karyne did the same.
"You let him go?"
Mavis stood over Eliana, her piercing voice pounding into Eliana's skull with the same force as the magic. Eliana tried to see what was causing her pain, but Mavis was relentless, white sparks flying from her fingertips as she spoke, like nails driving in each word.
10 years it took me to catch him and brand him, and you let him go, twice. Remember how well that worked out last time?
The wind picked up around Eliana as she fell to the stone floor, curling up in a ball with her eyes closed. The white light kept coming, kept hitting her in just the right spot to set her nerves on fire once more. She cried out, no longer able to hear Mavis's words, especially with the intolerable wind. How could one woman control so much power, so much magic? They had to get rid of the bodies, just like they'd done with Arvid. They could do it. Eliana squinted at her companions, trying to see who might be free to start the process, but her vision blurred with each white light that struck her. Suddenly, the fiery currents stopped, and so did Mavis's tirade. But the wind grew louder, like Mavis was working it up to a tropical storm. Eliana came to her knees, summoning her blood's energy, letting it shift and grow until she sent it out like a wall, a shimmering light that encompassed everyone near her, protecting everyone behind her on the east side of the balcony. "Mother?" Eliana called, scanning her companions still on the west side of the shield, still not safe. Her mother's hand lifted, but she was too far for Eliana to reach her, too near to Mavis. "How do we defeat her?" Eliana asked. Her mother sat up, eyes sad. Her lips moved, but the words couldn't reach Eliana over Mavis's wind. Eliana fought her way forward, the shield forced to press against the wind, while everything behind her remained calm and still. "Get rid of the dead," she called out. Karyne and Lukai were quick to obey after their experience with Arvid. The others followed, sending all the bodies behind her shield over the balcony's edge. As she passed more, they removed them as well. Soon, Eliana would reach Mavis's side. And then what? The nearer she got, the more her shield flickered. Mavis's white bolts of light were back, penetrating the shield and weakening it. "How do we defeat her?" she asked again. "You have to—" This time, Eliana caught half of her mother's words, the tail end getting sucked away by Mavis's wind. Eliana pressed forward more, her mother nearly in reach. Mavis's face contorted, the volley of sparks hitting the shield multiplying, and the flickers growing longer, the occasional wind and bolt getting through. Aeliana winced, pushing as much of her power into the shield as she could, ensuring that once she stepped past her mother, they'd both be safe on the other side. Her mother's breath caught with the change of environment, her hair settling around her face as the wind died to stillness. "You have to kill me." Aeliana's shield faltered, and Iris let out a yelp as one of Mavis's sparks got through to her thigh. Aeliana infused her shield with more power, but while stronger in the center, its canopy grew smaller, the edges thinner. "What do you mean?" Aeliana asked, certain she'd misheard. "If she dies, I die." Her mother pulled Aeliana's dagger from her sheath, holding it out so the daisy on the pommel was level with Aeliana's hand. "But if I die, so does she." Aeliana's shield flickered as she backed up. "No, I can't. There has to be another way." Her mother smiled, then shifted her grip. "It's all right." Too late, Aeliana realized what her mother meant to do. She dropped her shield, then reached out to pull the dagger back, to keep her mother from taking her own life. But Mavis's white bolt hit her mother's leg first. The dagger fell from her mother's hand as she dropped to her knees. Mavis dropped as well, seeming weaker after her efforts to break down Aeliana's shield. Aeliana grabbed her dagger to keep it out of her mother's reach, but then hesitated. Was it true? If she went after Mavis, would she be endangering her mother? They had to find a way to weaken Mavis, to bind her magic until they could get answers. She sheathed her dagger and put up the shield once more, driving it toward Mavis, imagining it wrapping around the woman like a cocoon. The black depths of Mavis's eyes faltered, and for a moment, Aeliana detected fear, either from the dark spirit or Mavis. It gave her confidence that this could work, that by placing the shield around Mavis, she would protect everyone else outside of it. The blackness leached from her aunt's eyes, the dark spirit pulling away to its own sense of safety. Mavis backed up on the balcony, eyes wide with terror, but her gaze rested beyond Aeliana. Before Aeliana could see what frightened her, blue and purple scales streaked past her, the wind knocking Aeliana over and making her lose her grip on her shield. But it didn't matter. Duraken's sharp teeth clamped around Mavis's pale form, and blood dripped in a trail across the balcony as he took his prize. "I want no debt with your kind. Now, we are equal." I hope you enjoyed listening to the latest installment of Blood of the Stars by Karyne Norton. If you enjoy listening to this narration, you might enjoy listening to the Finding Fantasy Reads podcast, where Paeter and I narrate fantasy short stories from a variety of authors to help you find your next favorite author. Check it out at findingfantasyreads.com. Thanks so much for listening.